guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin yang, come along.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them.
And this so-called SAVE Act is like Jim Crow 2.0. They don't want poor people to vote. They don't want people of color to vote because they often don't vote for them.
Well, the United Nations still has tremendous potential to be a tool for good in the world. But we cannot ignore that today, on the most pressing matters before us, it has no answers and has played virtually no role.
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America.
All right, thanks, Scott Shannon. Hour 2, Sean Hannity Show this Friday. 800-941-SEAN is our number if you want to be a part of the program. All right, so I have been pointing out, and again, I'm going to tell the story. I don't often have time during the week to meet up with friends. My schedule's too tight, and I'm just busy, and I'm focused and dialed in on my job every day. And I have a lot of reading to do, and I like to work out and eat right, and I like to cook my own food. So, but it was a rare moment. I had a very good friend that happened to be in town, was able to grab breakfast this morning. And while I'm there, my phone is blowing up because this decision comes down as it relates to tariffs, a 6-3 decision. Okay, and I'm reading it, and I'm getting doom and gloom all over my phone. This is a disaster. We may have to pay back $300 billion. And I'm like, okay, let me finish my breakfast. I'm going to go home. Went home, read the opinion as quickly as I could, read the dissents of both Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Clarence Thomas. And I realized very quickly, and then I watched the press conference of President Trump, that this decision in many ways is meaningless. And it's right there in the dissent of Justice Kavanaugh, who went, and the president cited him when he gave his remarks today. And that is, although I firmly disagree with the court's holding today, the decision might not substantially constrain a president's ability to order tariffs going forward. He was correct. And then what's even better is he laid out the solution that can be implemented. And he said it would be an unmitigated disaster and utter chaos if it ever came down to having to work out some repayment plan. And how do you who paid the money, et cetera, et cetera. But putting all that aside, and what the president then went on to say is he can charge a lot more. And he announced that he would be charging more, 10% more. And numerous other federal statutes, in fact, authorize the president to impose tariffs and justify most, if not all, of the tariffs at issue. And then the exact statutes were referenced in part in the dissent by Kavanaugh, as echoed by Clarence Thomas in a separate dissent, building off of Kavanaugh's dissent, and then the president announcing that these statutes include the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. He gave the exact section 232, the Trade Act of 1974, sections 122, 201, 301, the Tariff Act, section 338. And, he points out it's a little longer process, but he implemented it all today, all of it. So the decision in that sense, in all practical terms, is rendered meaningless almost immediately. Now, the president did talk about the court in general, that there are some justices that will never rule for him. He's not wrong. It's political. That's why I worry about justice in this country, because there is too much. There are too many political agendas in play. Like, you may be charged with a crime in one jurisdiction and there's no evidence to convict you, and yet you go into a politicized jurisdiction if you're a political figure, and you're going to be found guilty just by walking in the courtroom. And pretty unbelievable. As Justice Thomas said, neither the statutory text nor the Constitution provide a basis for ruling against the president. Congress authorized the president to regulate importation. And, of course, there's a lot of precedents behind it. Long story short, I'm going to get legal analysis from our friend Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst. And we really do have a special guest today, Anthony Esposito. Now, Anthony happens to be a saint. And I say that affectionately. I've spent time with Anthony. He's a great guy. And he is married to our very own Linda, but he's also runs his own capital group as he's the CEO of AscalonVI, which is a capital group, which obviously is impacted by this decision, if in fact he was going to be impacted by it. Anthony, great to have you. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, Sean, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
By the way, does Linda overfeed the cats? Because we're going to get to that later in the program. I'm just asking.
Let's just say the cats are very fat and very happy.
Okay. Well, one got so fat that it needs the fat shot, but instead, I guess we sent it to the fat farm. Now that President Trump made saying fat okay again. All right, let's start on the legal side. Greg Jarrett, your analysis of the decision and the dissents.
Well, the court got it wrong because Article 2 of the Constitution, Section 2, gives the president broad power over foreign affairs and international commerce. And tariffs qualify, quite obviously, as both. But on top of that, as you pointed out, Sean, Congress delegated to the president even more authority under several trade acts and the Emergency Powers Act to, quote, regulate imports. What is that? Well, it's tariffs. But the majority today decided, well, we're going to draw a distinction without a difference by saying, gee, when Trump invoked the Emergency Act, it doesn't actually say the word tariffs. And since we think tariffs are really taxes in disguise, that's the power of Congress. They're playing word games, Sean. They're twisting the plain meaning of the phrase regulate imports because that's a very comprehensive term historically. And, of course, it means tariffs. It means duties and license fees, limits on imported goods. It means all those things. But, you know, look, I listened to the oral arguments. You could see this coming. It had less to do about the law, more about political perceptions at a time when, you know, the Supremes may feel under siege by Democrats for always siding with Trump, which is not true at all. He's lost quite a few. And it's no coincidence that John Roberts wrote the majority opinion because, you know, as Chief Justice, he cares more about the reputation of the court and his own personal legacy than he does fidelity to the law.
Anthony, let me get your take on this from an investor's point of view, and more specifically, the options that are available for the president to not only not have to pay back, but to continue an even more statutory authority than he was even using or implementing in this particular case. For example, the Section 301 of the Trade Act, or Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, or Section 122 of the Trade Act, all of which seem applicable and all of which the president imposed today.
Yeah, I think from an investor point of view, it's concerning to me. We were actually looking at this mosaic of the Trump policy, the Trump agenda, and we were looking at deregulation. We were looking at drill, baby, drill. We were looking at lower taxes, the big, beautiful bill, the tariff trade deficit conversation, private investment in the country. Everything was moving in the right direction, which I'm sure was driving the Democrats crazy. And then we look at the tariffs in particular, and there were two things that were really important as far as the trajectory of the economy. The first one was simply the tariffs we received, right? So we're receiving tariffs. We received about $250 billion in tariffs. Not only is that money that's coming into the United States and helping work on a deficit reduction, which we desperately need, but on the trade deficit side, where we are relinquishing less U.S. dollars abroad. So we've been exporting our wealth with these massive trade deficits for decades. And that has done damage to the dollar, and it's done damage to the standing of the United States. And on an inflationary front, it's been horrible. So we've taken in tariff dollars, and we've exported less U.S. dollars. This is really important. The second part of the negotiation, as far as the financial part, we've taken in about $7 trillion in investments pledged to the United States through these negotiations, from everyone from the UAE to Saudi Arabia to Japan to South Korea. These investments are key to the growth of private industry and in the United States, private GDP growth, not government-funded, taxpayer-funded inflationary growth, which we saw under Biden, but private investment growth and the reigniting of manufacturing and construction and the private economy in the country. So we're now, the Supreme Court is now ruling, and I agree 100%, obviously, with Greg, that unconstitutionally they took away the tariff revenue. They're allowing us to now start to have to send more U.S. dollars overseas, and now you're taking away $7 trillion in private investments, which would equal higher real wages, more private industry jobs, a growth, and an onshoring of manufacturing in the country. It's a disaster that the Supreme Court ruled in this way. It is clearly political, it's biased, and it is truly hurting the American worker. As far as where...
Talk about the... I'm sorry, continue.
No, really quick, Sean, thank you. As far as where Trump goes, he already said that they're drafting Section 122, which is a 15% tariff across the board for the next 150 days. And then you can look at other items, and I love the fact that Kavanaugh in particular, in his opinion, gave the path to where this could actually give Trump more power as far as tariffs. If you look at Section 338, for example, of the Tariff Act of 1930, he could actually put tariffs of 50% across the board if he wants to under that section. So he has some ways to go. He's going to use every tool in the toolbox, and he's going to continue to fight the fight, I'm sure.
What about the power that this president he's used as commander-in-chief to keep the country safe and secure by basically saying to countries that you either get on board and you adopt peaceful policies, or I will institute a tariff on your country. It seems to me that the left is all too willing to Bigfoot on top of the president's authority, constitutional authority as commander-in-chief. Greg.
Yeah, but Congress, dithers. That's the only thing they're good at. Look, Trump knew this was coming. I know that because I actually talked to him in November, shortly after the oral arguments, and he knew a lot about those oral arguments. He was paying attention, and as a consequence, the White House had been preparing to do what he did today: replicate the exact same tariffs under 3 different trade acts that Congress passed over the last century that gives the president authority to levy tariffs, and they literally use the word tariff. So there'll be no bickering over that. So, for example, under Section 301 of the 74 Trade Act, he can do it to counter unfair trade practices or injury to our domestic industry or balance of payment deficits, all of which have been happening to the United States for a long time and damaging our economy. And Trump's the first one to finally stand up and say no more. There are 2 other trade acts that empower him to assign tariffs against countries that discriminate against the U.S. or threaten our national security. So his power is not going away. As for the messy business of billions in refunds to importers, don't forget, Trump has enormous leverage. I mean, he can say to these foreign importers, you better waive your right that you think you have to a refund, or the next round of tariffs that I'm going to invoke against you or under a different authority are going to be a lot more harsh. So, let's not forget, Trump is the consummate negotiator. He is more than capable of driving hard bargains. He's been doing it his whole life, Sean.
Well, that was the first thing I thought. I'm like, if you think this is over, you people do not understand Donald Trump. Anthony, where does this end up? Does this now become the next legal battle, the next court battle?
Yeah, I believe it does. I believe, however the Trump administration needs to move through that process, legally they will, but we're going to end up in the same place. The tariff conversation, the trade deficit conversation is key to the Trump agenda. And to your point, they truly do not understand Trump, his drive, or where he's directing this country. So we'll end up in the legal battle. We'll run through the motions that we need to, and we're going to end up in the same place. And true to form, I would bet that we end up in an even better place because it seems like every time they come at Donald Trump, he comes out right and he comes out in a stronger position. So that's kind of how I see this playing out.
All right. We really appreciate your expertise. Anthony Esposito and Greg Jarrett. And Anthony, by the way, married to Linda. My last question to you is, you don't really like those cats either, do you? I'm
going to tell you something. Linda is a heaven sent, and I can that animal I need to have her in my life. I'm very happy with my fat cats.
Oh, okay. I'm just, see, Linda, he's acknowledging that they're fat. We'll get to that with Pags later in the program today, okay? Appreciate you both being with us. Greg Jarrett, Anthony Esposito, thank you. His company, by the way, is AscalonVI. That's his wheelhouse. And Greg Jarrett, of course, the best on the law. Listen, if you own a firearm, okay, you need that just in case somebody wants to kill you and your family. That's part of your personal safety security strategies. But according to the last year we have numbers for 2022 from the FBI, that's less than 0.01% of all altercations that require that lethal response. We all have a safety plan. It includes firearms. But do you want the weight of having to pull that trigger if you don't 100% have to? The financial, legal, emotional weight of it all? That is the beauty of this new technology. I want you to look at some videos. Go to byrna.com. Now, this launcher has powerful deterrence. Tear gas, kinetic rounds. You can hit pepper spray. You can hit a target 60 feet away. One of these shots can incapacitate any attacker for up to 40 minutes. There is a reason this technology now adopted by over 500 government agencies, police departments, and private security firms. And don't forget these launchers, hand-assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Don't forget their compact launcher, the smallest to date, 4 inches long, 2 smartphones thick. Very easy to conceal carry without attracting unnecessary attention. It's small, but it's powerful. It fires at 400 feet per second, 41 joules of force per square inch. Anyway, check out their videos online and see if you want this technology for your personal safety and security strategies. Go to byrna.com, byrna.com, or check them out at your local Sportsman's Warehouse location.
Ted Koppel says Sean Hannity is bad for America. Sean Hannity.